for participating in this web conference about food safety, Colombia and the United Arab Emirates opportunities for growth. We hope you're okay in these circumstances of the pandemic, and we would like to thank the government of the United Arab Emirates in terms of the donations given in this crisis. We want to thank our attendees, uh, business people from the United Arab Emirates, and all of the people who are promoting the growth of this sector, which is one of the cornerstones of the economic activation. My name is Paula Garcia. I'm the vice chairman, and let me talk to you about the reason for ProColombia to exist. It is an entity in charge of promoting Colombian exports, international tourism, the country brand, and foreign investment in Colombia through our network of 8 international headquarters and offices in different continents. We offer support and thorough help to foreigners in terms of tools aimed at facilitating the design and execution of the internationalization strategy, looking to close business opportunities in all productive sectors outside of the mining and oil sector, which is agro-industry, which is one of Colombia's main economic cornerstones. According to DANE, which is Colombia's statistic entity, farming recorded the highest growth during the pandemic, showing the best perspectives for the reactivation of the rural countries and for our producers in consolidating new productive connections with domestic and international companies to diversify the exportation basket and use the region as a location for nearshoring and as a food storage point for our country. The economic activation and foreign investment go hand to hand. It also spearheaded non-energy or mining investments in 2020. It increased by 7%. It reached sales by almost $8 billion. We are committed to the growth of foreign investment in this sector and in any productive sector. From ProColombia, with the leadership of the Ministry of Commerce, in Industry and Tourism, we would like to bring initiatives for growth, generating jobs, and also making Colombia's agro-industry more technical. The results speak for themselves. During Ivan Duque's administration, we have assisted over 90 projects in agro-industry with businesses for at over $2 billion, leading to the creation of over 27,000 jobs in the country. This is the kind of efficiencies that best promote the sustainable conditions in the future to ensure the food safety of our region. It is the product of work to promote the potential of the sector with business and investment opportunities, wagering on competitiveness and sustainability with more efficient processes, with lower costs and more profits, thus strengthening the Colombian business infrastructure. In all the productive sectors, we have joined consolidated efforts as a result of a multi-sector country response that expresses the importance of playing for the Colombian team. It is a wager by the High Government, the Ministry of Tourism and Industry, the Chambers of Commerce, entrepreneurs, department authorities, regional investment entities, the Foreign Relations and Diplomacy Office, and ProColombia, among other entities. Everybody's role is essential to materialize the promotion of the country and the arrival of new projects, investment, and strategic alliances with Colombian companies and other initiatives that have transformed and are transforming our territory. Among the promotion strategies, I would like to highlight the Colombian Investment Summit, which is the most important summit in the country, which will be held by late November 2021. Colombia Inside Out in the UK next week. Our presence at Expo Dubai, Expo Colombia Fixation, which is a Shark Tank format where our entrepreneurs will meet up with investors. Webinars and specialized agendas have been essential in our attraction of investment to Colombia. And the agribusiness sector has been key. We have focused on the strategy of bringing foreign investment of high efficiency, that is, the one that reports the best benefits for the productive apparatus. We want to connect Colombia with global or regional value chains and increase the value of sophistication of the offer of goods and services. We have wagered on the attraction of mega investments, anchoring companies, and the investors are looking for a strategic location for the expansion of their operations in Latin America. We have tax breaks and a new regime of free trade zone, as well as the red carpet strategy for taking care of high investment operations in the country, thus facilitating and influencing on the decisions of investors' permanence in the country. ProColombia is also spearheading the strategy by the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, and Tourism. We want to export exporters, and the results are outstanding. Right now, we have 957 companies fully identified. About 800 of those have been contacted, and we generated many potential opportunities for investment with 54 investment ads. 10 of them are in agribusiness, has avocado, cocoa, coffee, cassava, and other agricultural products. The perspectives are positive. The World Bank estimates a growth by 5.9% for Colombia by 2021, and it is actually one of the region's highest, and Colombia is the third receiver investment in Latin America, and we work with conviction to go for more. We can see that foreign investment is a cornerstone for economic reactivation and connectivity in our country. Colombia is growing as a strategic partner for the United Arab Emirates in Latin America in terms of food safety. And in this aspect, we're going to hear some words by our chairwoman of ProColombia, Flavia Santoro. Flavia, you have the floor. Okay, I would like to start by greeting and thanking all of the representatives from Colombian companies and United Emirates companies who are as attendees and speakers for this webinar. I would also like to greet the people joining us today to get to know the opportunities offering Colombia in terms of food safety and as a strategic ally for the Middle East in Latin America. That's one of the biggest wagers for Colombia to promote the attraction of Colombian investment, and it's been an essential cornerstone of the 2030 vision, which is being worked on by both the Colombian and United Arab Emirates governments. The strategic objectives of that 2030 vision have been included in the purpose of achieving commercial exchanges of over $1 billion, the reinforcement of international airport connectivity between the Middle East and Colombia, and the attraction of mega investments in sectors such as agri-food. All of these aspects are related to our three axes of work, which will substantially promote the fact that Colombia is the main ally for the Middle East in the MENA region in terms of food security. Of course, all of the above is going to be strengthened by our participation, our historic participation in Expo Dubai, which we believe is going to be the main strategy for approaching this region in the world. And we have full potential to do so. If you allow me, I would like to share some data to try and support my statement. According to FAO, Colombia is one of the 7 countries considered as the food storage point of the world by 2030, where the global population is going to be 9 billion people. We have an agricultural border of 9 million hectares, of which we only use less than 20%. So there is a golden opportunity for making the Colombian rural sector more dynamic and attract direct foreign investment to our country. We are aware of this in ProColombia, and we have focused our efforts on anchoring investments to try and generate productive linkage, making jobs more dynamic, and innovating the agro-industry with the transfer of technology and knowledge. All of the above with a clear purpose, consolidating Colombia as a competitive and attractive country for the world's investors. According to the World Bank, our country offers favorable conditions in aspects such as financial inclusion for producers, regulations for access to fertilizers, and transportation services for agricultural goods and water wealth, because we are the third best evaluated country in terms of the management and use of water for irrigation. But I would also like to highlight that thanks to the geographic conditions of our country, we have the possibility of producing food 365 days a year in an uninterrupted manner, and we have five altitudinal layers that allows us to have all the different climates of the world in one single territory. So in today's webinar, we'll be able to interact with Colombian business people in terms of the most relevant topics around food security, both for the United Arab Emirates and for the MENA region. So for the business people and entrepreneurs of the region, the message is clear. You can have absolute certainty that Colombia is your ally in Latin America to ensure, on a sustainable basis, high quality food. The figures account for the fact that we're already moving in the right direction. In 2020, for instance, total Colombian exports to the United Arab Emirates exceeded $166 million. That is 7% more than in 2020. As a matter of fact, we exported our first containers of Tahiti lemon, Valencia oranges and bananas, but we also recorded a 50% increase in the exports of agri-food, which went from $12 million to about $18 million. That hike is particularly given by the export of fresh fruit that increased by 107% from $790,000 to $1.3 million, and beef that grew by 242%. Lastly, I would like to ratify Colombia's commitment and also that for Colombia with the universal exposure of Dubai. We are certain that this national project is going to become a huge opportunity so that we can continue bolstering our linkages and we can strengthen this growing and fruitful relationship with Middle East and North Africa and South Asian countries. Thank you so much, everybody.
Muchas gracias, Flavio, por tus palabras.
Flavia, thank you for your kind words. And as she pointed out, we want to elevate our relationships with the United Arab Emirates to a new level, promoting connectivity and investment linkages. Expo Dubai and spaces such as this are key in this purpose. Now, I would like to pass the floor to Juan Carlos Mora, chairman of Bancolombia, one of Colombia's most important banks, which is part of the Colombian representation at Expo Dubai, who will be sharing a message with Colombian agriculture producers who are so important in terms of food security. Okay, Juan Carlos, you have the floor. Paola, thank you so much. For Colombia and Flavia, thank you so much for this invitation. Good morning, government officials, Colombian entrepreneurs, and also good afternoon to all of those joining us from the United Arab Emirates. So for me, as a representative of Bancolombia, it's a great pleasure to join this seminar because of what it means for everyone in terms of how Colombia, which is a power in terms of livestock and farming production, and the significance of being a food pantry for the world. From Bancolombia, we are committed to having the Colombian potential to develop and become a reality. Both Paula and Flavia told us about some of the figures of what Colombia has achieved and how much it's advanced. The pandemic has clearly shown us that we have a possibility for that development of the agricultural sector to become a clear element of growth for the country. During the pandemic, the Colombian agricultural sector responded to some clear needs. Now, from the financial sector, from Bancolombia, we have been working for quite a few years now in supporting the agricultural sector, both small producers generating productive chains and working with anchoring companies so that the small producers can have technical assistance and a good market, and so that they can access export markets through the consolidation with anchoring companies. That creation of clusters and productive chains may come together to generate productivity and also to comply with export standards. That's very important. We've done it with avocado, but we're also working to achieve it with other products with the capacity for exportation, which is absolutely high for the government. And we are committing funding resources so that the development of the agricultural sector will become a reality and an important driver for our country. Also, from livestock production, we have been generating environmentally friendly livestock production, the grazing operations, and the production with due consideration of the environment. That is an essential characteristic. So I congratulate you on this meeting. I congratulate you on the Colombian capacity. It is a win-win relationship. It provides with rural growth, which we need so badly. And for the United Arab Emirates, there's a possibility for having a business partner who's efficient, who generates quality, who's reliable, with access to markets. Bancolombia has declared itself an ally of this strategy, and we've committed our capacity to continue supporting this development. So, today present, the reality is shown by the figures. It was shown by Flavia before, but the potential is huge, and it depends on all of us to work on this and to make it an essential factor for the growth, the development of Colombia, and also to contribute food security. So, on this note, I finish my presentation and I thank you for the opportunity of participating in this conversation, Paola. Thank you so much. Okay, Juan Carlos, thank you for your presentation. It's a pleasure to count on your presence, and the future of the country relies on our work on the agricultural sector. I would like to thank you all for your presence today, and I want to pass the floor to Marcela Urueña, the advisor for the Colombian Vice Presidency, who will lead this block in today's session. Marcela, you now have the floor. Okay, Paola, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity of being here with you, and to everyone who's connecting by means of this webinar, not only here in Colombia, but also from different places of the world. Very quickly, before I start my panel, which enjoys the participation of a series of important speakers, I would like to give some brief words with regards to what we consider may be several conditions by which the Colombian agricultural sector has a series of potentialities which are very significant to strengthen these commercial relationships between the United Arab Emirates and Colombia. What I'd like to mention is that according to the International Fund for Agricultural Growth (FIDA), back in 1950, the production of food in developing countries will have to double because we take into account the growth of the available income in emerging economies, the improvement in diets, and the increase in the world population, which is estimated to reach 9 billion people.
Condiciones, Colombia tiene unas
Under
características.
these conditions, Colombia has ideal conditions to become an agro-industrial power in the region, which, as Flavia said, one of these has to do with the enormous agricultural zone, 40 million hectares, although we only use 8 of them. And as if that were not enough, we also have a variety of microclimates which allow agricultural production all 365 days of the year. And besides that, we have abundant water supplies. And that's why we believe that Colombia is extraordinarily attractive to foreign investors, not just because we can supply demand to other regions with more competitive prices, but because at the same time we have a portfolio of free trade agreements that allow us to reach third-party markets and lend stability to those investments. Colombia is recognized as one of the oldest democracies of Latin America, and we have a series of tax incentives offered by the Colombian government that make it extremely attractive to foreign investment. The Pact for Colombia by President Duque defined a series of strategic guidelines for the transformation of the Colombian countryside from 2018 to 2022. And I'd like to mention quickly a few of them that I feel are particularly important to promote this foreign investment in the agricultural sector. The first is organizing production. Second has to do with access to finance and instruments, access to financial instruments for risk management. We are also running a series of efforts in order to massify contract agriculture, proposing major interests between the Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in processes of sanitation, licensing, and access to international markets through what we know in Colombia as sanitation diplomacy. Our journeys to the world have brought us great learnings, and we have understood the need to begin managing a new normality. But it also made visible a series of strengths, among which the agricultural sector is one of the most important, because it represents a view to development and a central pillar for economic reactivation. And that's why we want to invite actors from the public and private sectors to persevere in generating income for our producers. And in platforms such as this, that Colombian institutions promote, such as ProColombia, we would like to find new commercial alliances with foreign and national companies that can allow us to diversify our exports and use Colombia as an ideal location for processes of nearshoring, and from there consolidate it as a breadbasket. Very briefly, I would like to say that proof of this is the good behavior that we saw in the agricultural sector that had a rate of growth and recovery of 21%, among which we can underscore products such as flowers, coffee, milk, has avocados. And among the main products that we export to the UAE are beef, coffee, flowers, banana, a series of confectionery sweets, and coffee-derived products. We are also undertaking admission processes for fresh eggs and standing cattle that we hope to be available in the short term. The UAE, here in Colombia, are considered a strategic ally when it comes to development and have contributed to projects of various kinds, such as initiatives to support early childhood education, transportation, improving infrastructure, stabilization, growth of medium and small enterprises. And that's why we feel that it's ideal to strengthen the relationships that exist between the two countries. whereas the United Arab Emirates can be the bridge between the East and the West. We are two globalized societies, and together we generate optimism. We are a source of creativity, supported by a mix of nationalities and races. So it's important that we have this space, and with these words, I'll hand the floor to the Vice Minister, Juan Gonzalo Botero, at the Ministry of Agriculture, our Vice Minister of Agricultural Affairs.
¿Me escuchan?
Can you hear me?
Doctora Marcela, me dicen del despacho del viceministro que está con un tema de agenda atendiendo para estos colectivos para que nos conecte, por favor. Muchas gracias.
No estoy escuchando muy bien.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear what was said.
Del despacho del viceministro nos informan que se conecta un poco más tarde, que está en otro tema de última hora, entonces para que por favor iniciemos con el segundo panelista. Muchas gracias, doctora.
Perfecto. Ok, listo. Bueno, muy bien. Entonces, de acuerdo con eso, quisiéramos...
Well, the Vice President is dealing to a last-minute issue, so we're going to, for the moment, hand the floor to Mr. Dino Francescuti, who is the sub-regional coordinator for the GCC and the FAO representative to the United Arab Emirates. And he will be joined in this segment by Mr. Ahmad Mukhtar, Senior Economist of the FAO Regional Office for the Near East and North Africa. With that, welcome to our two panelists, Mr. Francescuti and Mr. Mukhtar. In this part of the panel, we have 10 minutes for each of you to speak. 10 minutes for both of you, rather. So I want to generate a dialogue with both of you on three major questions. So what we're going to do is split the time into 5 minutes for each of you so we can hear your remarks in this very productive dialogue that we hope to have. First, I'm going to read those three questions that we have for each of our panelists, and we'll have 5 minutes with each of you. The first question is, what are the biggest challenges that the Near East and North Africa face when it comes to food security, in particular in those countries that make up the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is the case of the UAE? We'd also like to know what are the policies and programs that have been deployed to achieve that food security, and what you believe are the opportunities generated for cooperation between Colombia and the countries of the region to contribute to that major aim of food security. Let's hear then from Mr. Francescuti.
Muy agradecido por la oportunidad de poder conversar.
We're very happy for this opportunity to be able to converse with you.
To address the first question, and y posteriormente podré atender las siguientes
And after that, I will attend to the other questions.
Over to you.
Thank you, Dino. Buenos dias, everyone, and Assalamu alaikum, everyone in Dubai. Thank you very much for Pro-Colombia to invite us and share some of the views. As Dino said, I'll share some reflections on the first question in terms of the major challenges. Now, we know that the dominant concern in the MENA region is the high and growing dependence on international markets, particularly the import of key staple foods, and that is largely due to the water and land shortage. We know that, particularly in the GCC countries. Now, in context of the water scarcity, that is quite a serious issue, as you know, in the region. As per one of the World Bank estimates or forecasts, the MENA region will experience the highest economic loss from climate-related water scarcity compared to other global regions. It could be about 16 to 14% of the total GDP by 2050. Now, GCC countries in particular are relatively food secure, and thanks to the importation, which represents between 60 to 80% of the rice, vegetables, cereals, meat, and similar food stuff. Now, at the same time, the GCC's high dependence on food imports is also due to growing urbanized or urban populations. Now, at the same time, we know that the COVID-19 has really deteriorated the situation. The food supply chains were disturbed to a certain extent, but largely in the GCC countries, it was not a major problem due to the policy by the governments and the related economic measures taken. However, we know that certainly it exposed some of the vulnerabilities in the food supply chains. Now, in this context, there is a lot of interest in producing more locally. Of course, we know that there is a limitation of water and land resources, but particularly in the GCC region, we have seen that there is an intensified investment spree in the agriculture technology to further reduce the dependency on imports. However, we know that the scale of the domestic food production could not be sufficient to meet the demands in next decades even. At the same time, one of the challenges in this region is of a food waste, particularly in the GCC countries. We know that reducing the food loss and waste is important to achieve the food security. A linked issue, by the way, to the food waste is the food safety and related standards, the food labeling, food packaging, and the maximum residue limits, and so on and so forth. This is becoming a major challenge, of course, for the regulators in these countries, but the exporters who want to export to these countries, they have to be conscious of increasing demands in terms of the standards and regulatory practices. Now, at the same time, there is a more attention that is required for nutrition-related problems because there is an increasing prevalence of overweight, obesity, and non-communicable diseases in these countries. The problem needs to be addressed within and through the cross-sectoral framework with the involvement of different partners and stakeholders. We know that this region has the second highest prevalence of obesity and overweight, with 62% of the adults overweight and about 27% obese. At FAO, we believe that the sustainable agri-food systems have a fundamental role to play in promoting healthy diets. At the same time, since this is the private sector webinar, that provides a good opportunity for the exporters to focus on the nutrition-sensitive or nutrition-rich type of exports to this region. Lastly, I would say that the technology has a great role to play. The region has already embarked upon using the technology for efficiency and resilience of agriculture systems, for the value chains and traceability of food, access to market, and building these solid data platform and information systems. So this is a very brief overview of the challenges or scenario, but I'll pass it on to Dino to address specifically for the GCC and UAE policies. Over to you, Dino.
Thank you, Ahmed. Bueno, ya me he descubierto como un hispanoparlante, así es que yo creo que mis hermanos...
I've always uncovered myself as a Spanish speaker. I think that my Colombian brothers and sisters wouldn't allow me to continue speaking in English, so then I will speak in Spanish.
Ustedes, hablando en español, un servidor es mexicano, a pesar de que...
So I'm Mexican, despite the fact that my name and my surname wouldn't look like it. I'm a Latin American.
Sobre
On the topic of policies and programs of the countries of the GCC, we have to say that all of these countries, in one way or another, have defined strategies for food security, in particular agriculture, which is more developed in some countries more than others. Agriculture surely has its limitations. There are clear companies, enabling factors, and clearly defined investment programs as well. The FAO, the UN Organization for Food and Agriculture, is supporting MENA countries in various ways. In the United Arab Emirates, we have projects that are oriented to supporting the research agenda as well as the tech and innovation research agendas for food security. Can you hear me? Yes. You can hear me properly? All right. In addition, we are working on aquaculture and the transformation of the livestock sector. In addition, we are working on food safety through planning efforts for sustainable development, in particular in Abu Dhabi. In Saudi Arabia, the FAO is supporting the implementation of a major project of agricultural development. In Oman, we have activities that support nutrition, statistics, extension services, phytosanitary protection, fishing management, sustainable management of fishing, and we're also working on these sectors. Aquaculture is one that I would underline, especially in many of these countries. We are also trying to launch initiatives in Kuwait. All of these countries, from the United Arab Emirates, but all of the ones in the Gulf, all of the ones that make up the GCC, have developed measures, strategic measures, to manage uncertainty, to hedge against uncertainty and against the fluctuation of global markets, and also geopolitical problems. Here, we might mention strategic food reserves. Many of the variants of these reserves have to do with diversification of the sources of import of foods. And certainly Colombia is a key ally within that strategy. There's probably an interest in expanding to more imports from Colombia, but not simply a diversification of sources of import. It's important for the United Arab Emirates and for other countries.
El desarrollo de la industria
The development of the processing industry, you can't begin to imagine how much food is processed in these countries. Both cereal as well as sugar, there is a significant food processing industry. As my colleague Ahmad was saying, there is a huge interest in the development of technology for agricultural production. There is a huge interest in producing more from our own countries, domestic production. It is a huge challenge, as has been pointed out, in terms of the limitations of resources, but most surely the need to reduce the risk of depending on exports is to be reduced. There is a huge interest in investing very strongly in order to produce more on a local basis. And that leads us to think about this. It's led us to think that part of the interests being talked about here is to develop technologies that can be provided to investors. So to say, Colombia is interested in looking at investments being made internally in Colombia. The UAE is also interested in having investment here. And at the end of the day, that implies smart investors who know how to invest all down the food chains by benefiting both Colombia as well as the country of destination, which may be the UAE or any other Gulf country. Now, in saying this, clearly not everything can be produced in this region because of the limitations of soil fertility and water resources, but everything that has to do with control environment agriculture is feasible, and there is a strong interest in investing. And as a matter of fact, investments are being made as we speak. Here, we produce all types of green leaf vegetables, tomatoes, green peas, high nutritional value vegetables, including fish such as salmon, sea bass, sea bream, using recircular or recirculating aquaculture systems. I can't help but mention, but in the UAE, there is a national food security strategy for 2050, for 2051, which is well defined with 5 well defined pillars. One is to facilitate agribusiness. Number 2, promote domestic production under the intensive use of technology. Thirdly, reduce food loss and waste. Improve food inequity and healthy diets in the community, so to speak. Finally, we need to be prepared for emergencies. COVID is an emergency that has left us a lot of lessons to learn in terms of challenges. One of the key enablers is to have a governance system for food security, which is important. Access and investment for I&D, investigation and development, and also reliable data, high quality human resources, and facilitating the movement of food, making sure that food movements are not negatively impacted. I would finish by pointing out that in the UAE, there are highly important developments, such as the fact that there is a national committee for promoting the development of modern agriculture based on the use of technology, which is being mobilized, which is generating policies and mobilizing significant resources. The Abu Dhabi Fund has resources for I&D around food systems. In Dubai, something known as the Food Tech valley has been launched, Food Technology Valley, which intends to become a base for technological development, a hub of innovation for food issues, and there is also a marine innovation park. And in summary, there is a great deal of interest in investing in technology. I would finish up by saying that both things are actually important for both the UNE, both for UNE as well as other Gulf countries to try to promote relationships with food producing countries such as Colombia, which is a key country in that sector. And we'd also like to bring in higher investments around production in this region. So there are business opportunities on both sides in terms of commerce as well as direct investment in the UAE and also in Gulf countries. Thank you so much.
Buenos días. Mientras solucionamos el problema
Good
de
morning.
audio,
While we solve the audio problem of Advisor Marcela Urueña at this point, we would like to invite Juan Carlos Cadena to talk for a little bit about Colombia's export offer and how Colombia has advanced in terms of the compliance with phytosanitary requirements and the diversification of the country's export basket. Juan Carlos, thank you so much for being with us. Hello, Natalia, thank you so much. Good morning, colleagues here in Bogota, and good afternoon to all attendees joining us from the Gulf countries, panel members and guests, and of course, thank ProColombia for the invitation. A message from Minister Valdivieso, who unfortunately cannot be here with us today. The Colombian export offer in agribusiness, I would like to start by saying that in the past few months here in Colombia, there's been a huge debate about the benefits derived from commerce agreements, and international trade and commercial relationships led us to a deep analysis about the participation of the agricultural sector in Colombian exports. And what conclusions we found: the agricultural sector is no doubt one of the biggest winners of free commerce. We always talk about commercial balance to try to identify exactly how we are doing in our operations with our various business partners. And in the case of the agricultural and livestock production sector, there's been a positive relationship, and that relationship reached over $2.5 billion. That was the figure given to us by the Director of Investment about the total agribusiness exports, which go up to more than $7 billion, which have jumped by about 25%. This is an opportunity for Colombia to sell products different from mining and energy products, which are an important part of our export basket. On this occasion, as indicated by FAO, we are on our way to become one of the world's food pantries. And I have some simple figures. I don't want to bore you with this, but external sales in terms of agricultural products account for 29% of total sales for non-energy or mining products, basically products other than coal and oil, which are part of our export basket. The sector has reached historic exports, $7.8 billion in 2020, with some important information, which is that the
medida de
exporters
empresarios que
network, the
alcanza los
entrepreneurs
2.261
who work in this
empresarios
sector
productores
is made
cubre
up by
aproximadamente
over 2,200 producers or entrepreneurs, and it reaches
bastante significativo.
27 different
Teniendo en
departments of the
cuenta
country, which is quite
En los
significant,
últimos 10 años
taking into account that in the past 10 years, that share of the market increased from 7.3% to 36.1%
producción de exportaciones de productos agrícolas.
of the production in
No
terms
solamente,
of
pues,
agricultural
esos,
exports. Now, not only
que algunos específicos
in those 27
productos
departments, but
específicos
there are some
que
specific products
han permitido
which
recuperarse
have allowed for us to recover areas
duramente
that
afectadas por el conflicto armado, como la Urabá, como
have
Nariño.
been harshly
Cauca,
impacted by the
Santander,
armed conflicts, such as Nariño, Cauca, Santander.
ellos
That has allowed us to generate benefits for the communities and for the region at large, and of course, well-being for the population in general.
claramente dentro de las exportaciones
Clearly, in terms of
digamos que tienen
agribusiness
representatividad,
exports, there are two sectors that are quite representative. Our traditional
están
exports,
representadas por lo que ustedes ya saben, café, flores,
represented
banano,
by
que representan más o menos el
coffee,
50%
flowers, banana, which you know well,
sector
and which
agropecuario.
make up about 25% of what we sell from the
Que,
agribusiness sector. But
ventas
it is worth
de
pointing out
productos,
that
diferentes a
our
esa
sales of products
productos
different from those three
Eh,
traditional products
se han impulsado de manera significativa en los últimos años.
have been
hoy en día
significantly driven in the past few years, and today present our exporting
aceite de
basket has
palma,
grown.
aguacate, como lo
Right now we
mencionaba,
have palm oil, avocado,
los
as
cítricos,
mentioned by the
la mandarina que
advisor
también mencionaba la
just now,
presidenta, Colombia,
citrus
uva,
products
uchuva,
such as
mango,
oranges,
otras frutas,
uchuva,
cacao y sus
mango,
derivados,
other types of fruit,
carne bovina,
cocoa and
también
its
mencionaba
derivatives,
la consejera, que
beef,
es importante.
which was also mentioned by our advisor, which is very important in the market, and we have been
Los
inserting
países
that
árabes y por supuesto nuestro
into Arab
colega
countries recently, and of course our
de
colleague
la FAO hablaba sobre la
from
acuicultura.
FAO
Colombia
was
ha desarrollado
mentioning
una
aquaculture. Colombia
industria
has
de
developed
tilapia, trucha, atún y camarón que tiene una gran receptividad.
an industry that grows
Estamos llegando a
shrimp,
productos con
tilapia, tuna fish, and those are the types of products
obviamente azúcar y
with which we have been reaching out to different countries. Of course, sugar and sugar derivatives, and also
estos productos
sweets and candy. That grew by 14.2% in terms of value. And maybe the most significant factor, by way of an example,
que
is
tuvo un
cocoa
crecimiento
and
de
its
4%.
derivatives,
La
which
carne
grew by
bovina, también ahí
4%.
mencionaba,
Beef,
con un
which
crecimiento
was also mentioned, grew by
de lo que exportamos.
62% as compared to what we were exporting back in 2019 and also
Crecimiento del
2018,
57. Estamos hablando
which is a
2020,
growth by
sí,
27%. By 2020, these are figures within the pandemic with all the difficulties that we've been facing. So the
tilapia y
growth has
frutas,
been
como les mencionaba,
outstanding.
también,
Okay, tilapia, fruit,
la tilapia
those also
hace
significantly grew.
40%, y en
Tilapia
el
fish, almost 40%. In the case of fruit,
30%.
around
Estos
30%.
productos se suman a
These
unos
products
bandera en las
are added
exportaciones, como el
to
aguacate,
some which are flag products such as
crecimientos
avocado, with very significant growth rates at 64% in 2019 and over 100% by 2018, about $146 million
arándanos, que también
by
crecen de una manera
2018. Cranberries also growing significantly, and other fruits such as passiflowers, tangerines, and oranges with very outstanding outcomes. Okay, just to finish up this topic, I'd just like to mention that this strategy comes to show that
Colombia
the phytosanitary surveillance system in Colombia has ramped up its standards, and it's allowed for better access to different markets.
en términos de cumplimiento de acceso
And there is an issue now in terms of
a esos requisitos
compliance and access to markets,
generar
in terms of
diversificación de nuestra canasta exportadora.
compliance with phytosanitary regulations that has allowed us to diversify our producing basket, we have done joint work known within the government as sanitary diplomacy, of course, with the support of Colombia, the Ministry of Agriculture, ICA and VIMA, and the Foreign Relations Office, as well as the participation of the private sector. We have implemented every possible action in terms of sanitary homologates with our allies to try and develop the requirements and the sanitary admissibility procedures to guarantee food innocuousness, as mentioned by our colleague from FAO, and trying to exceed some of the most significant access barriers for our sector in international markets. This sanitation diplomacy strategy has achieved important goals, and we've accomplished about 40 authorizations or sanitary licenses for a total of 29 products, 13 are agricultural and 19 livestock production products in 19 countries. The most important one is, again, Tahiti. Lemon has avocado, bananas, beef, and its derivatives. That's something which in the Gulf region is essential. Right there, we are making very significant efforts, and we've achieved admissibility in the Emirates for this beef product, but we're also working on having access to other countries of the Gulf, such as Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, and not only beef, but also pork. We're making efforts to try to expand on the availability of access for our exports in our exporters in the world. All of these strategies, of course, aim at the strengthening of the agricultural sector. They aim at a program or a device implemented by the Ministry of Commerce, again with the support of the Colombian Foreign Office Office of Foreign Relations, to try to promote the agribusiness sector, whose growth expectations are very high in non-traditional products within the sector, going from 2.6 billion to over 3 billion by 2022. These objectives, of course, seek to bolster not only the business infrastructure, as I said before, but also to increase and diversify the export offer and position the country brand overseas and consolidate commercial, long-lasting relationships with our partners around the world.
Para terminar, mencionar que como
Finally, I'd like to say that, as the president of ProColombia explained, for us, Expo Dubai will be the window for accessing the countries of the region with our products. Participation in this major fair will most likely make us better known and will allow us to enter into the community, enter into people's homes, and develop strategies to promote our products based on the consumption and the needs of a balanced, healthy diet. In this regard, Colombia, once again,
con el desarrollo de su dispensa, el desarrollo de los espacios disponibles para
by
la
developing available spaces for production, we are open to attracting those investments and developing technologies that will allow us to fulfill that role that has been commissioned to us.
Consejera, seguimos con problemas de audio. Bueno, seguiremos.
Counselor, we still have audio problems. We'll try to resolve them.
Para su audio. Mientras
we'll try to resolve your audio problems. In the meantime, I would like to thank Dr. Cadena for his presence, for the interesting data that he shared with us, which are certainly terrific news for the Colombian agricultural sector, and for this topic that we are discussing today, which is food security. In the meantime, then, I want to invite Maria Avila, the Overseas Business Development Director, who will be representing Mr. Tahnoon Nimer from the private office of His Highness Sheikh Said bin Tahnoon. So, Maria, welcome. I'd like to ask you, what are the characteristics of projects that you are seeking related to food security in the region? We would also like to know, in your experience, how can public and private Colombian and Latin American organizations improve by presenting investment opportunities to investors from this region? Welcome, Maria. Thank you. First of all, I would like to clarify that unfortunately, Dr. Tahnoon had something come up, and I'm here to replace him in his position as CEO of the CEO of Emirates Focus Group. Can you hear me? Hear you perfectly. Okay. So the Emirates Focus Group leads a group of Middle Eastern and European companies of different kinds, companies that are in the telecom business, green energy, agriculture, cattle ranching, security, which is to say, these are sectors that are considered strategic both in the Middle East and in the north of Africa. We have begun an expansion throughout South America. Last year, we created a company in Argentina. We are also working with European companies and Eastern Europe, among others. I simply wanted to clarify that in addition to leading the Emirates Focus Group and some 70 other companies, he also represents the private office of His Highness. Having said that, I'll proceed with the question. Some time ago, I contacted Colombia because of a specific topic to request a quote for beef. When you ask me how we can improve that bond, my perception, although we have not been in Colombia, my perception with regards to some countries in Latin America, although not only Latin America, is that sometimes the producer who has very high quality products and who understands their sectors in terms of production, sometimes the producer doesn't have the tools that allow them to properly manage the sale and export, or they don't have the appropriate knowledge to be able to quote or to use the financial instruments that today are ordinary when it comes to paying for exports. These are one of the main problems that we have come across. This happens in Colombia as well. The supply does not always arrive at the opportune moment. At this moment, Colombia has an export capacity, and we understand that the quality of the products in terms of food security and products These are key, as well as the production of animal protein. Your location and your international position is excellent. You produce not only beef, but in producing beef, you have the option of industrializing certain derivatives I'm referring here to bovine products and blood products that today have a lot of room in regenerative medicine and can be applied to many of the products that are used in pharmacies. Among them, for stem cell research, tissue reproduction, reproducing vaccines, which is to say, we're not talking just about beef, but everything that comes along with it. This is one of the issues that's interesting because Colombia, besides having fertile soils, has water. And nowadays in the world, these are two essential issues. And given the progress of global warming, this is a comparative advantage that doubtless is beneficial for Colombia when it comes to producing all order of vegetables and beef and what we can derive from them. We are interested in coming to production agreements, commercial agreements in Colombia, in sectors that are strategic for us, such as animal production, because of what I said, because of the amount of water required to produce a kilo of beef in comparison to a kilo of chicken or lentils. The fact of the matter is that to make this viable, we need investments, and investments require security, and this is another of the bottlenecks that sometimes we find. In what way can Colombia offer security for foreign investment and security for the teams of foreign companies that visit Colombia? Well, thank you very much, Maria. I would like to ask whether you can hear me now. Yes. Great. Well, then I think we managed to resolve the technical problem I had. I'd like to jump in here to briefly wrap up what we've heard so far from our four speakers. I think it's very interesting to underscore the fact that all four of you have discussed an issue, which is the need of the United Arab Emirates and all the countries of the Gulf to guarantee your food security through imports.
Entrada de alimentos, buscar una mejora en la dieta de su población.
You want to improve the diets of your populations. I'd also like to underscore that as a strategy for that food security,
que además es una meta aquí en Colombia,
there is a search for consolidation of sustainable cattle ranching that maintains high standards of sanitation in the beef that's offered to consumers internationally, but at the same time respects environmental criteria. At the same time, we can talk about how Colombia has been developing aquaculture and chicken farming in a highly competitive fashion, where we also satisfy a series of conditions that make it unbeatable, such as the supply for the diversification of exports towards the United Arab Emirates. Initially, we also wanted to discuss that thanks to all these conditions, we can propose important context for diversification of that export portfolio. And in this manner, we can drive the potential of the country as a reserve of food. Thanks to climate, the agroecological supply, the water supply. I'd like to close by, because a couple of our speakers have said this already, there is a need to leverage the complementary nature of our two countries when it comes to agriculture. In Colombia, traditional agricultural production is possible thanks to the availability of earth and water.
En Emiratos Árabes tenemos la posibilidad de
In
empezar
the United Arab Emirates, we can start investing in agriculture in controlled environments. These mutual investments can drastically improve supply chains through production under these two modes. And we can start investing in research and development. Finally, there is a need for the agricultural sector internationally to improve risks and uncertainty, because this way we can guarantee not just the supply of markets, but we can also guarantee the level of income of producers in this activity. So with these words,
Perdón, disculpa, pero te voy a interrumpir.
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you.
Reforzar la seguridad alimentaria.
You talked about strengthening food security through imports. That's not exactly the case. And I'm going to bring some nuance into that. It's not that exactly. It's a two-way process. At least for the group that we represent, the idea is not simply to import. The idea is to operate jointly. It's about increasing the security of investments, both for working in Colombia with Emirate capital and with Colombians here. And on the other hand, the issue of food security is not just about diversity, ecological diversity, which Colombia has, and its water. We're also interested in addressing one of the bottlenecks and key points, which is port infrastructure, logistical activity, the existence of industrial poles that can allow exporters to store their product and process it in order to later export it. So in terms of logistics and port activity, I think these are complementary to food security, and our group has an interest in participating in these sorts of projects. So we're not just talking about importing certain products, but getting involved in the process to structure all of this. And that's why I insist that the security of investments and of the teams that need to travel is key. Thank you so much, Maria, for those remarks. I was trying to underscore some of the key points when I talked about the possibility of generating complementary investments in the countries, specifically because each country has different capacities that make us perfectly complementary. Perhaps I wasn't clear enough. But that's essentially what I was getting at. Perfect, I got it now. Developing synergy. That's right. Well, that's very interesting because essentially we've discussed certain opportunities for that commercial relationship between the countries to become deeper based on the possibilities of mutual development. I would like then to hand the floor to Mr. Munir Ahmad Chowdhury, the investment director of the office of the director of the private office of His Highness Sheikh Ahmed bin Obaid Al Maktoum. We're going to hear now from Dr. Munir Ahmad Chowdhury, and I would like for you to tell us.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much all. It was a really very interesting.
En realidad,
Muchísimas gracias por su presencia. Quisiéramos entonces que nos
comente. Thank you so much for your presence. We would like for you to tell us from your experience through the investments being made worldwide, what are the preferred investment mechanisms within the agribusiness sector? Do you usually make these investments by looking for a local partner on site? And we would also like to know what kind of projects do you prefer in Latin America? Greenfield, brownfield? How do you go about the study processes as well as your experiences with regards to these types of investments?
Yes, thank you very much. And first of all, thank to all. And it was a really very informative session. And actually, we are developing industrial zone in many countries already. We have in South Korea, Nigeria, different countries. That is our specialty. And second, as His Highness office, private office, I am the head of investment. And our major investments are into real estate and technology. And yes, we are going to also organize a big trade mission corporation. It's something very different. We are working on it a long time. Second time, for industrial zone investment parks, to reach that level, we are organizing at very regular basis investment events, purely investment expos, investment summits, like this. So right now we have acquired big data about investors, and first priority industrial zone. Second, you can use. Okay. No problem. So number one, our specialty is the industrial zone, A to Z, scratch to manage. Number two, real estate. Number three, technology. But now we are trying to go into food and some tradings. So that's why it was a very lovely about food security and trading and the stuff, other the things. So that is the thing. Now we can discuss whatever you want. I can share my knowledge or whatever the question.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias por su intervención. No
Thank you so much for presentation. I don't know if probably we can get a little more information about what kind of projects do you prefer in Latin America? Can you hear me okay? Okay. If Mr. Munir can probably tell us about the types of projects you guys prefer in Latin America. What is the type of investment that you believe is most appealing? And in which ways do you guys carry out the previous analysis before making the investment decisions outside of the UAE, outside of the United Arab Emirates?
Quickly about Colombia or Latin states, already we have not investments, and in this sector we are interested, but already we are into Middle East in many countries. Then South Korea, as I just mentioned, we are developing a medical free zone. Then in Africa, we have a few projects. UAE, of course, it's a ruler's office, it's His Highness office. So in real estate, we have a lot. And in banking, we have in two banks some shares. So that is the in this region. But about Colombia, before that, we have not any investments. But if there is any proposal or anything about, we can discuss and we can share that opportunity. But before, we have not.
Entonces, sabiendo eso, quisiera preguntarle cuál
So
sería.
getting to know this, okay, what would be some advice that you could give to either private or public entities trying to approach your offices and interested in making investments so that they can have the possibility of receiving investments by you?
As just mentioned, in technology, we are the very quite big in technology investment. Any kind of technology, tech application, some in education or healthcare, anything about new technologies, if we are very much interested. We have more than 300 developers and big team, and a very serious investor in technology. Now we are working in this. And before, and our major investment in real estate, and then if there is a industrial zone or investment zone, we have a quite big network about investors, so we can give very wisely advice. We have an expert, all kind of expert. So in three sectors, we have a very specialty. So anybody or any company who are interested or having something in industrial zone, investment park, special economic zone, then technology, real estate, so we are very welcoming.
Pues muchísimas gracias de verdad por esa información que nos comparte.
Thank you so much for this information you're sharing, Mr. Munir Ahmed Chadwick. It's quite interesting to see that effectively there are some possibilities for investment, mutual opportunities that can be explored on the basis of the binational relations.
Any kind of partnership, we are open, and we are here to welcome any companies, any department in UAE, Dubai. It's a purely, of course, His Highness office. So we are very welcoming, and we can share anything, information, whatever help required, any kind of protocol, whatever investment protocol. So we are available.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias de verdad por esa apertura. Yo creo que eso.
So, thank you so much for being so open. That indicates that there are huge opportunities for Colombia in the United Arab Emirates. So now I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Roberto Vélez, Director of the Colombian National Coffee Growers Group, who was also an ambassador to the UAE from 2008 to 2011. And he also was the ambassador to Japan. So he's very familiar with all of these processes of trade relations between Colombia and its business partners. So Roberto, welcome. It's so good to see you back again. And I would like for us to be able to close this panel by talking about how Colombian coffee has spearheaded the positioning of the Colombian agribusiness sector and opening up new markets to different products. And just like we have said all throughout this panel, this could be quite interesting within the UAE strategy to try and guarantee their food security. keeping into account all of these situations, I would like for you to tell our audience this morning what has been the key to success of the coffee growing sector to open up new markets, to gain good position, and this evolution that you have generated, or this transformation process that the Coffee Growing Federation has developed from selling green coffee to now selling a product which has reached international markets with added value. Okay, Marcela, thank you so much. Kind regards to everyone, and I'd like to thank Colombia for the invitation to participate this morning. Kind regards to everyone following us from Colombia and the UAE. Maksabak for our friends in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and the UAE and Middle East and North Africa region. First off, I have a couple of comments about food security. Before talking about coffee, let's not forget that when I remember my time in Abu Dhabi, I can't forget that these are countries that lack fertile soil to be able to grow food products. And that's why the food security issue is so essential for that whole region, given the fact that people cannot eat sand or drink oil. So it is important to generate the capacity for producing food, and that's why they make all kinds of efforts to guarantee that the tables of their citizens actually get enough food. When one visits supermarkets in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and so forth, what we can see is products from all over the world. Tomatoes come from Iran, green peas come from Amsterdam, asparagus comes from England, avocados come from Mexico and Colombia. So you find the whole geography represented by the food of the Emirates. And we cannot forget either that one of the strategies of all of the Arab countries and of the Emirates as such is purchases and investments in huge plots of land for growing products that go to the Emirates. And that's why there was a discussion about investment in countries that can guarantee their food security. It is a fact that the Emirates bought about 800,000 hectares of land in Pakistan, in Sudan, as well, to try and guarantee around the world fertile soil to be able to produce and ensure their food security. Now, when it comes to coffee, and to delve into this particular topic, what the Federation has done initially is to set up high quality export supply, and we saw that all throughout this morning's webinar. We should be able to generate, first off, credibility around the product, which is what we've done with Colombian coffee, and secondly, we need to be able to position ourselves within a market niche that provides us with the possibility to become exporters with higher value. And that's something we can achieve by means of huge efforts, by means of a commitment based on the quality of our product and the delivery of our product and the capacity to actually cover the whole value chain and jump in and jump into action at the right time. And that goes hand in hand with those who are on the other side of the world. Sometimes we just want to reinvent the whole business. We want to start from here and end up with the product being sold in the Emirates. We actually need to try and acquire assistance so that we can become able to generate a virtuous cycle starting from Colombia and adding as much value as possible in Colombia, we can best position our products internationally. And that was part of what we've done around coffee. We started with the sale of raw materials. We were able to separate ourselves from the world boom regarding 100% coffee. We are the only country that made that effort of being able to separate ourselves from the rest by means of a high quality and complementation strategy. But with the assistance of the industry, we didn't do that all by ourselves. We're now exporting coffee, which is being processed from Colombia, which under that format of 100% Colombian coffee has already reached international markets. And on top of that, we are already expanding our shops, the Juan Valdez shops. These are the stores that sell our coffee, our beverage all around the world, adding value. That's why the participation of Colombian coffee growers at Expo Dubai is going to be very active. And what we hope is to be able to establish links so that we can penetrate with our coffee shops in the Middle East, in the north of Africa, and why not throughout the rest of the countries who are in such need of the products and services generated within the UAE. And an example of the UAE is to have become the hub of many of the goods and products and services, and that's a huge opportunity for Colombia regarding food security. In the framework of our relations with the UAE, because from there we can expand to the rest of the region and to many other countries that we never thought we could be in contact with. Just by way of an example, the UAE is actually the gateway for most of products going into Iran, but it's also the gateway for products into East Africa. East Africa also requires a lot of products, and we can reach out to those countries as well with Colombian products, namely coffee, so that it can expand to different markets and different regions. Okay, thank you so much for that presentation. And going back to your last words, I would like to reinforce the message. We can exploit the condition of the UAE as a gateway and as a hub going to other latitudes of the Middle East and Africa. And how Colombia can also become a gateway to Latin America, but specifically we can capitalize on the potentialities of the Colombian market. For me, it's important to be able to close this panel with the Colombian ambassador for many years, our smooth Colombian coffee. And we can see all of the numerous opportunities of complementation between both countries, and there are several conditions that draw our attention towards the availability and the possibility of doing business between the two nations. And with a calling for national government entities, which are the ones in charge of taking all of these products to international markets, to support our agricultural producers, we want to thank you all for having joined us all throughout this morning. Thank you so much, and have a nice day, everybody.